The fourth Necormancy Conjure has finally released into the game, and while it is nothing special, it is something you're going to want to be using anyway. Let's talk about it, so whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. The brand new Phantom Guardian is a conjure locked behind a single talent point in the 5th tier of the Well of Soul. While this only requires 4,500 souls in total, you will need to gain access to tier 6 to unlock its full capabilities, which requires 8,500 souls. For the hasty among you, please consider waiting and thinking for a second, as this does require an additional talent point that could be spent elsewhere. I say that because the command ability isn't going to be useful in every scenario, while the Phantom itself is a nice passive, or has a nice passive. The Phantom Guardian protects you against damage taken, much like a Hellhound familiar would, except instead of having a health pool, it can soak up an infinite amount of damage. It reduces damage by up to 5% with a cap based on your level and stat boost. Notice how after drinking an overload it goes from 211 maximum damage soaked to 220. This 220 is the maximum amount of damage or hit splat you'll ever see on your Phantom Guardian, because that's the max amount it is able to reduce or soak up. So if I take a hit of 4.4 thousand damage, 5% of that 4.4k is going to be 220 and will be soaked up by the Phantom Guardian, and it would leave me with a damage splat or damage taken of 4,180. If my character is hit by an ability or boss attack above 4.4k, let's say 5,000, it wouldn't suddenly soak up 250 damage. No, it's a 5% reduction with a cap of 220, so even though I get hit by 5,000, instead of soaking up 250 damage, which would be 5% of that, I would be soaking up 220 damage, as that's my personal cap. Take this example. I'm about to be hit by Vindicta in hard mode with a ranged attack. As you can see, Vindicta deals 3,167 total damage, 5% of which, being 158, is soaked up by the Phantom, at which point I'm only hit for 3,009 damage. This in itself can make the Phantom Guardian worth using, and it could just be the edge you need to AFK certain training spots all the way to level 99 or 120 once unlocked. I've personally had multiple experiences where having a little bit of extra damage reduction or healing is going to give you the edge to AFK a method or boss, and this conjure could be that edge instead of a Vampirism Aura or, let's say, the Deathward Archaeology Relic power, just to mention some examples. This could also allow you to AFK a method using a Ripper Demon instead of using a Bunya for healing, and so on. This conjure's passive isn't overpowered by any means, but it could open up some doors for certain players lacking unlock, especially if you haven't unlocked the second command ability just yet, because using the conjure on its own, without the secondary ability unlocked on your action bar, might already be a good idea. I'll be getting into why you may want to hold off with the command ability in just a second. But hey, the conjure itself only costs 60 ectoplasm per hour, or 120 if you're using the Conjure Army ability at level 99. It's worth noting that the Phantom Guardian's passive only works with core damage types and does not work with typeless damage. The command ability, which you can use once the Phantom Guardian is up and active, deals an average of 45 to 55% ability damage to your target and up to 4 additional enemies within 1 tile of that target. This damage is increased by 20% for each stack of valor you have, which are stacks you gain per hit on your character while the Phantom Guardian is active. The maximum amount of stacks is 25, at which point you'll be able to deal 545 to 555% ability damage, which can be increased through certain buffs. Now this in itself is pretty decent. I mean, I'm able to deal about 7,000 damage to 5 targets, which I could use for minions, for Slayer. But the problem is the cooldown of the ability, or the command ability, is 9 seconds. So if you're using this with Revolution, which most players are going to be using for Slayer anyway, because we all like to AFK, you're going to be using this ability, the command ability, very often, and with the exception of tasks where you're being attacked by a lot of enemies, for example Abyssal Savages, it might not be worth using this ability at all. Now keep in mind, this is day 1. This is essentially my first impression of this ability and conjure. I'm not going to be able to tell you that, hey, you need to place it on action bar slot 5 at this method, and then it's going to be worth using over ABC. What's important here is that for this ability to be worth it, you need to be attacked by a lot of enemies so that you can gain your Valor stacks quickly before the cooldown is finished and you're able to use it again. You are able to artificially extend how long you have before the ability is used by placing it further down your action bar, But you also kind of need the Undead Army ability on one of your first slots to make sure it's summoned early to gain those stacks and work efficiently. To figure that out, well, that's going to require a lot of testing per method, but I don't think it's going to be fantastic at every method in the game. I think it's going to be a little bit niche, at least when looking at AFK methods, and for example, at Armored Phantoms, I don't really see it working properly. I don't think it's, worth the ability slot in your action bar. I would just use it as a passive damage reducer using Undead Army, and not use the command ability. You could probably use it for bossing if you're actively looking at the stacks and then use it on minions or some kind of pools. But really, it's just, for the majority of players, I think the passive is going to be the more useful thing, at least when you're looking at the majority of content you're doing. We'll see how it develops in time. Perhaps if Jagex adjusted Valor stacks to damage taken instead of hits taken, it would become more useful at places where you take less hits, but each hit is higher damage. For example, Armored Phantoms, where one stack could equal 100 or 200 damage taken instead of, one hit. Yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.